She laughed at him in front of everyone. A powerful CO, pointing at a poor black mechanic, mocking him. Asterisk, fix this engine and I'll marry you. Asterisk, the crowd roared with laughter, confident he'd fail. But what happened next left her humiliated, the audience in shock, and the world talking. This wasn't just about fixing an engine. It was about crushing arrogance and proving the true power of respect. Before we dive in, welcome to Backslash, your channel name, the place where powerful real-life lessons and inspiring stories come alive. If you love stories that touch the heart, challenge arrogance, and remind us what true respect means, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon, because you won't want to miss what comes next. Fix this engine and I'll marry you. The words rolled off Amanda's tongue like venom, followed by a burst of laughter that spread across the glossy showroom like wildfire. The sound of her mocking tone echoed against the glass walls, bouncing off the polished marble floor, and settling deep in the ears of every guest present. It wasn't just a statement. It was a public humiliation. Amanda wasn't just anyone. She was a glamorous CEO of a luxury automobile company, known across the city for her sharp mind, her killer heels, and her even sharper tongue. People admired her success, but whispered about her arrogance. At 32, she had built an empire, but she carried herself with the air of someone who believed she was untouchable. That evening, Amanda was hosting a high-profile showcase in the city's most expensive showroom. The atmosphere was dripping with wealth. Golden chandeliers sparkled above polished cars that looked more like artwork than machines. The air smelled of expensive perfume, fine champagne, and fresh leather. Influential businessmen, politicians, and celebrities mingled about, sipping drinks, networking, and pretending to be impressed by every detail. But then disaster struck. The star of the night, Amanda's prized luxury sports car, imported from Italy and valued at more than most people's houses, refused to start. The sleek red machine sat in the middle of the showroom, dead and silent, its glossy curves mocking her as much as the audience did behind their forced smiles. Amanda's pride was on the line. Her investors were watching. Her clients were waiting. And in that silence, as she fumbled for a solution, a man stepped forward. He didn't look like he belonged there. David, a mechanic, a tall black man in his late 20s, wearing worn-out overalls smeared with grease and heavy boots that clicked awkwardly against the pristine showroom floor. His calloused hands held a simple toolbox, nothing like the gleaming silver trays of hors d'oeuvres being passed around. He had been hired at the last minute to take a look at the car, recommended by someone who had sworn he could fix anything. But to Amanda and her high society friends, he was just a mechanic, an outsider, a man who didn't fit into their world of tailored suits, designer dresses, and diamond watches. Amanda folded her arms across her chest and smirked. "You? Fix my car?" she scoffed, tilting her head toward her friends. "This car costs more than he makes in 10 years. Her friends laughed, their jeweled earrings shaking with every chuckle. One man raised his champagne glass and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe you should stick to fixing old trucks on the side of the road." But David didn't flinch. He simply placed his toolbox on the ground, his deep brown eyes calm, his face unreadable. Amanda wasn't done. She wanted to make him small, to remind everyone that he didn't belong. So, with her voice dripping with sarcasm, she leaned closer, letting her words slice through the air like a knife. "Tell you what," she said, her red lips curving into a cruel smile. "If you can fix this car that world-class mechanics fail to touch, I'll marry you." The crowd gasped, then erupted into laughter. Some clapped, others shook their heads in disbelief. To them, it was entertainment, a game. Amanda stepped back, proud of her clever insult, certain she'd put him in his place. But then David spoke. His voice was calm, steady, and confident, cutting through the laughter like thunder on a clear night. Challenge accepted. The room fell silent. The laughter froze midair. Amanda blinked, not sure if she heard him right. "Excuse me," she said, her tone sharp. "I said," David repeated, meeting her eyes without a hint of hesitation, "challenge accepted." For the first time that night, Amanda was caught off guard. She had expected him to bow his head, to laugh nervously, to walk away in shame. But instead, here he was, standing tall, unshaken, his shoulders squared as if the entire room wasn't against him. The guests turned, whispering among themselves. Some were amused, eager to see him fail. Others were shocked at his courage. A few even looked impressed, though they hid it behind polite smiles. Amanda tried to laugh it off, tossing her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. "Fine," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Go ahead, show us your magic tricks. But don't say I didn't warn you. This car isn't some broken-down pickup from the street." Her words stung, but David didn't let it show. He bent down, opened his toolbox, and carefully laid out his tools, one by one, on the marble floor. His movements were deliberate, precise, as if every motion carried purpose. The contrast was striking. On one side, Amanda and her glittering circle of wealth, sipping champagne and sneering. On the other side, David, in his greasy overalls, preparing to take on a challenge that everyone else had already deemed impossible. In that moment, the energy in the room shifted. What had started as a cruel joke was now something more. It wasn't just about fixing a car anymore. It was about pride, about dignity, about proving that worth isn't measured by the shine of your shoes or the price of your suit, but by the strength of your skills and the determination in your heart. David picked up a wrench, stood up, and looked at Amanda one last time. "You might think this is a game," he said firmly, his voice steady. "But to me, it's not. I take my word seriously. And if I say I'll fix this engine, then I will." The room fell into a hush. No laughter, no whispers, just silence and the faint hum of tension thick in the air. Amanda, still holding her glass of champagne, found herself at a loss for words. For the first time that night, she wasn't laughing. And so, the challenge began. The challenge had been set. The whole room buzzed with curiosity and mockery as David, the mechanic, crouched beside Amanda's expensive sports car. The crimson paint gleamed under the showroom lights, but beneath the hood lay silence, an engine that had refused to breathe for weeks. To everyone else, this was a hopeless case. The car wasn't just rare, it was infamous. Imported from Italy, this model was a masterpiece of engineering, designed for beauty, speed, and status. But it was also notorious for being nearly impossible to repair without a specialized team of factory-trained technicians. Amanda had already flown in experts. They had poked around, scratched their heads, and left with embarrassed shrugs. And now here was David, a local mechanic from a small neighborhood garage, standing in the middle of the glittering showroom, under the eyes of wealthy elites who doubted his very presence. Amanda smirked and sipped her champagne. "Careful," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Don't scratch the paint with your tools." Her guests chuckled. One whispered loudly enough to be heard, "I'll bet $1,000 he gives up in 10 minutes. The laughter stung, but David didn't respond. He had learned long ago that the best answers aren't spoken, they're proven. David opened the hood, and the crowd leaned in. To them, it was just a mess of wires, metal, and confusion. But to David, it was a puzzle. And puzzles were meant to be solved. He pulled out a small flashlight, shining it into the intricate system of tubes and valves. His brow furrowed as he listened, not to the voices mocking him, but to the car itself. He could almost hear his father's words echoing in his mind. "Engines are like people. Son, if you listen carefully, they'll tell you what's wrong. Don't just look with your eyes. Listen with your heart." Those words had guided him since he was a boy. His father had been a mechanic too, running a small garage in their neighborhood. They didn't have money, but they had skill, and young David had spent countless nights watching, learning, and experimenting. While other kids played video games, he was taking apart old engines, studying their secrets, and putting them back together. That garage had been his school. His father had been his professor, and every broken machine had been a lesson in patience, discipline, and resilience. But Amanda and her friends didn't see any of that. To them, he was just a man in dirty clothes, sweating under the pressure of a room full of powerful people. Amanda leaned against the car, tilting her head at him like he was some kind of entertainer. "What's wrong, mechanic?" she teased. "Is it too complicated for you? Maybe you should call your daddy for help." The laughter around her grew louder. Still, David stayed silent. His hands moved steadily, carefully disconnecting wires, examining the spark plugs, tracing the flow of the fuel lines. Every detail mattered. Every sound told a story. Minutes turned into an hour. The crowd grew restless. Some checked their watches. Others whispered bets, certain that failure was inevitable. But slowly, very slowly, David began to piece together the problem. The engine had been tampered with, improperly repaired before. Whoever had worked on it last had replaced the wrong parts, leaving the entire system unstable. Most mechanics would have given up, but David's sharp eyes caught the pattern. He pulled out a small wrench and began loosening bolts. Click, click, click. The sound echoed through the silent showroom. He replaced a damaged gasket, tightened a loose connector, adjusted the timing belt with precision. His hands moved like a surgeon performing an operation. Meanwhile, Amanda grew impatient. Her smirk was starting to fade. "Honestly," she muttered, swirling her glass of champagne, "how long are we going to let this go on? He's wasting everyone's time." But one of her guests whispered, "Look at him. He knows what he's doing. Don't you see the focus in his eyes?" Amanda scoffed, but for the first time, she noticed it too. David wasn't flustered. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even distracted by her insults. He was confident. That confidence unsettled her. Inside, David was fighting more than just a broken engine. He was fighting the weight of every doubt, every sneer, every assumption that had been thrown at him since he was young. Growing up, people had looked down on him for being poor, for being black, for being the son of just a mechanic. Teachers told him he'd never go far. Neighbors whispered that he'd end up nowhere. But here he was, standing in a room filled with the wealthiest people in the city, holding his own against their laughter. Every bolt he turned, every adjustment he made, wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about proving something. Proving to Amanda, proving to her friends, proving to himself. Hours passed. Sweat rolled down his temples, soaking his shirt. His knuckles bled slightly from a sharp edge, but he didn't stop. And then there was a sound, a faint click, a subtle alignment, the kind of sound only someone like David would notice. He stepped back, wiped his hands on a rag, and stared at the machine with a quiet smile. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. For the first time that night, he spoke, not to Amanda, not to the crowd, but softly, almost himself. "There you are," he whispered to the engine. "I hear you now." Amanda, still pretending to be bored, rolled her eyes. "So? Are you done proving yourself? Or should I order you a pillow so you can sleep under the hood?" Her friends laughed again, but the laughter was weaker this time. They, too, had noticed a change. The car didn't look lifeless anymore. Something about the way David had worked, the way he stood now, made it clear something was about to happen. He tightened one final bolt and set down his wrench. Then, standing tall, he turned to Amanda. "Try it now," he said simply. The room froze. Every head turned toward the car. The champagne glasses stopped midair. Amanda narrowed her eyes but slipped into the driver's seat. Her manicured hands gripped the wheel as she pressed the start button. Everyone held their breath. The room held its breath. Amanda pressed the ignition button with a smirk, fully expecting silence. Or worse, a pathetic sputter that would send the crowd into another round of laughter at David's expense. But instead, vroom, the engine roared to life like a beast awakened from slumber. The deep, powerful sound shook the glass walls of the showroom and reverberated in every chest. Heads jerked up, eyes widened, and mouths dropped open. The sound was flawless, smooth, strong, confident. The same guests who had mocked David just hours earlier now stood frozen in disbelief. Some gasped, others instinctively clapped their hands over their mouths. A few let out nervous chuckles, unsure of how to react. Amanda gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. She stared at the dashboard, her mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. The car had been declared unfixable by world-class mechanics. Yet here it was, alive, purring like a brand-new machine under her touch. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, applause. It started slowly from one or two people, but soon the entire room erupted in claps, whistles, and cheers. Some shouted unbelievable, while others shook their heads in awe. David, standing tall with his rag in one hand, didn't bask in applause. He simply looked at Amanda, calm and composed, as though he had known all along that this would be the outcome. Amanda climbed out of the car slowly, her heels clicking against the showroom floor. She tried to mask her shock with a weak smile, but her usual confidence had cracked. Her guests were all watching her, waiting for her reaction. "Well," she said, forcing a laugh, "I suppose you did it." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her. David tilted his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "And what about your promise?" he asked. The crowd gasped again. Phones were already out, cameras recording every second. Amanda's words from earlier, mocking, arrogant, unforgettable, were fresh in everyone's memory. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you." Now, standing in front of the very man she had ridiculed, Amanda found herself cornered. One of the businessmen whispered loudly, "She can't back out now." "He did it." Another laughed. "This is the best entertainment I've seen in years." Amanda's cheeks flushed red. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on." It was a joke. Nobody actually thought. David cut her off, his voice calm but firm. "Maybe it was a joke to you, but to me it was a challenge. And I take challenges seriously." The room fell silent again. People leaned forward, desperate not to miss a word. Amanda's carefully built image, the powerful CEO, untouchable and superior, was slipping away. In its place stood a woman who had underestimated a man because of his clothes, his job, and his background. For a moment, Amanda's mind scrambled for a way out. She could laugh it off, walk away, pretend none of it mattered. But the look in David's eyes stopped her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was something else, something that unsettled her even more. It was dignity. Flashbacks of her cruel words played in her mind. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you." At the time, it had seemed witty, clever, even funny. But now, with hundreds of eyes on her and David standing tall, the joke wasn't so funny anymore. The guests began whispering again, their voices carrying across the room. Is she really going to say no? He deserves her respect at least. "I can't believe he actually did it." Amanda swallowed hard. "Look," she said finally, her voice softer now, almost apologetic. "You've proven your point. You're clearly talented. More talented than I gave you credit for. But marriage? That was never serious." David took a step closer, his presence commanding attention. "I don't need your hand in marriage," he said, his voice steady and clear. "That was never my goal. What I needed was to show you and everyone here that respect should never depend on money, status, or skin color. Dignity isn't something you give or take away. It's something earned, and tonight I earned it." The crowd erupted in applause again, louder than before. Some stood on their feet, clapping and cheering. Others recorded, knowing this moment would go viral by morning. Amanda stood frozen, her pride shattered but her heart stirring with something she hadn't felt in years. Humility. As the cheers echoed around them, David turned away from the spotlight, gathered his tools, and began packing them back into his box. His work was done. To him. Fixing the car had been more than repairing an engine. It had been a chance to reclaim his worth, not just in the eyes of Amanda, but in the eyes of everyone who had ever doubted him. Amanda watched him silently. For the first time that night, she didn't see grease-stained overalls or calloused hands. She didn't see just a mechanic. She saw a man who had faced her ridicule head-on and walked away not only victorious, but graceful. Her heart, once filled with arrogance, now battled with respect, and something else she couldn't quite name. Later that night, as the guests spilled out of the showroom buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed, David walked out quietly, toolbox in hand. He didn't wait for thanks, applause, or recognition. But Amanda couldn't shake the sound of that engine roaring back to life, nor the weight of David's words. For years, she had been praised for her intelligence, her leadership, her success. But tonight, a man society overlooked had shown her something she had forgotten. That true power doesn't come from wealth or titles. It comes from character. And though she wouldn't admit it out loud, Amanda knew deep down. She had been changed forever. The crowd's cheers still echoed when David stepped back, wiping the last trace of grease from his hands. His expression remained calm, almost attached, as though fixing the impossible was simply another day's work. For him, it wasn't about applause. It was about dignity. But Amanda wasn't calm. Her carefully polished world had been shaken. Hours ago, she had been the queen of the room, commanding laughter with her sharp jokes and sparkling confidence. Now she felt like the punchline of her own story. Dozens of eyes bore into her, waiting to see how she would handle the words she had once thrown out so carelessly. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you." Her chest tightened. It had been meant as a cruel joke, a way to humiliate the mechanic in front of her powerful guests. Yet here he was, standing tall, his challenge completed, and now the weight of her words pressed down like a stone. The crowd began to chant, some with smirks, others with genuine excitement. What about the promise? What about the promise? Phones were lifted higher. Red recording lights blinked across the room. Amanda knew this wasn't just happening here. It was happening online. Within hours, maybe minutes, her humiliation would be broadcast across the internet. Headlines would write themselves. "Arrogant CEO mock mechanic, he silenced her." Her face burned crimson. She raised her glass and forced a laugh. "Oh, come now," she said, waving a manicured hand as though brushing away a fly. "You didn't really think I meant that, did you? It was just a joke." David interrupted. The words were quiet, yet they cut through the noise like a blade. He stepped forward, not threateningly, but with a calmness that carried more weight than anger ever could. "To you, maybe," he continued, his deep voice steady. "But to me, it was a challenge, and I don't take challenges lightly. When I say I'll do something, I do it, because my word is all I have." The room fell silent. Even Amanda's most loyal friends stopped smirking. Something about the way David spoke, measured, confident, honest, demanded respect. Amanda's lips parted, but no words came. For once, she, the woman who always had a clever remark, was speechless. A businessman near the front broke the silence. "He's right," he said firmly. "A word is a word." And he kept his. Others murmured in agreement. The tide was shifting. Just hours ago, the room had laughed at David. Now many of them looked at him with admiration. Amanda felt cornered, her pride crumbling under the weight of the truth. She could lash out, she could continue to mock, but deep inside she knew it wouldn't matter. The power she once held over this crowd was slipping away, transferring to the man in greasy overalls who had just done the impossible. She tried again, her voice softer this time, almost pleading. "Look, I didn't mean to disrespect you. You've proven your skill, and I'll admit I was wrong about you. But marriage? That was never real. You understand that, don't you?" David studied her for a moment, his gaze piercing. Then he shook his head slightly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I don't need your hand in marriage," he said. "That was never the point. What I needed was to prove something. That respect shouldn't depend on the clothes someone wears, the money in their pocket, or the color of their skin. Respect should be given to every human being." The crowd erupted in applause again, louder this time, echoing with sincerity. Some guests even whistled. One woman called out, "Well said." Amanda's throat tightened. Each clap felt like another reminder of her arrogance, another crack in the mask she wore so proudly. But David wasn't done. He took a breath and added, "When you mocked me, you weren't just mocking me. You were mocking every person who works hard with their hands, who builds, who repairs, who keeps this world moving. People like me don't wear suits and ties, but without us, even your most expensive machines would stop working. Without us, your world would collapse." His words landed like thunder. Even those who had smirked earlier now lowered their eyes, ashamed. Amanda swallowed hard, her chest aching with a mix of humiliation and something new, respect. She had built her empire on intellect and ambition, but this man, this mechanic, had reminded her of a truth she had forgotten. No one is above anyone else. The room began buzzing again, people speaking over one another, debating whether Amanda would apologize or not. Some guests looked directly at her, their eyes sharp, almost demanding accountability. For Amanda, the realization hit like a wave. This wasn't just about a joke anymore. It was about her character. She opened her mouth, ready to say something defensive, but then she stopped. The words stuck in her throat. For once in her life, Amanda Carter, the woman known for her quick wit and ruthless comebacks, had no armor. Instead, she lowered her eyes and whispered, "You're right." The crowd gasped. David raised an eyebrow, surprised but calm. Amanda looked up, her voice stronger this time. "You're right. I disrespected you, and I shouldn't have. I let my pride and my ego get in the way. And tonight, you reminded me that true worth isn't measured by wealth or status. It's measured by integrity. And you have more of that than anyone I've met." The applause that followed wasn't just polite. It was thunderous. Guests rose from their seats, clapping, cheering, some even wiping their eyes. Amanda felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. For years, she had been admired, envied, even feared. But respect, the kind David had just earned, was something she realized she'd been missing all along. David gave her a small nod, his expression unreadable. He gathered his tools, packed them into his worn-out box, and prepared to leave. Amanda wanted to stop him, to say more, but the words wouldn't form. All she could do was watch as he walked away, his back straight, his dignity intact, his head held high. The unexpected twist wasn't that David had fixed the impossible car. The real twist was that he had fixed something much deeper, the arrogance in Amanda's heart. And as the doors closed behind him, Amanda knew one thing for certain. Her life, and the way she looked at others, would never be the same again. The night of the showcase ended, but its impact didn't. What had started as a moment of mockery turned into a turning point, one that rippled far beyond the walls of the showroom. By the next morning, videos of the event had exploded across social media. Clips of Amanda's mocking words. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you," juxtaposed with the roaring engine, and David's calm response spread like wildfire. "Mechanic silences CO. Humility wins over arrogance. The man who fixed more than a car." Headlines wrote themselves. The story reached millions overnight, and David's name became known far beyond his small neighborhood garage. For David, life changed almost instantly. His little workshop, once quiet and overlooked, became flooded with customers. Cars lined the streets, waiting for his touch. People didn't just come for repairs. They came because they wanted to meet the man who had stood up with dignity in the face of arrogance. Journalists requested interviews. TV stations offered him airtime. Business owners begged him to partner with them. Yet David remained the same. He showed up to work each morning in the same overalls, carrying the same old toolbox, treating every customer with the same respect, whether they drove a rusty pickup or a $1 million sports car. When people asked him how he felt about the fame, he always answered the same, "I'm just a mechanic. My job is to fix what's broken. That's all." But deep down, David knew something had shifted. He hadn't just fixed a car that night. He had reminded the world of something it desperately needed. That true value lies not in wealth or titles, but in character. And then there was Amanda. For her, the days following the showcase were some of the hardest of her life. Everywhere she turned, the story followed her. At first, she wanted to dismiss it, to spin it with her PR team, to paint herself as a victim of a misunderstood joke. But every time she rewatched the video, every time she heard her own mocking tone and saw David's calm strength, her heart sank deeper. She couldn't deny the truth anymore. She had been wrong. In board meetings, her employees avoided her eyes. Investors questioned her leadership. Strangers online flooded her social media with criticism, calling her arrogant and out of touch. The powerful CEO who once commanded admiration now felt the sting of shame. But instead of fighting it, Amanda did something she had never done before. She listened. She replayed David's words in her mind. Respect shouldn't depend on the clothes someone wears, the money in their pocket, or the color of their skin. Those words echoed louder than the applause that had followed. They struck a chord deep inside her, forcing her to reflect on who she had become. A week later, Amanda made a decision. She dressed simply, not in her usual tailored suit, but in jeans and a plain t-shirt, and drove herself, without her entourage, to David's garage. The place was buzzing with activity. Customers chatted while waiting, Cars lined the block, and David was under the hood of a truck, his hands as steady as ever. When Amanda stepped inside, the chatter quieted. People recognized her immediately. Some glared, others whispered. But Amanda kept walking, her heels clicking nervously against the concrete floor. David looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Amanda broke the silence. "I came to say thank you," she said softly, her voice stripped of arrogance. "Not just for fixing my car, but for fixing me." David studied her. He saw no smirk, no mockery, only sincerity. "I realized something that night," Amanda continued, her words trembling. "For years, I thought power came from money, status, and control. But you showed me that real power is in integrity. You reminded me that respect isn't given because of titles. It's earned. And you earned mine." The garage fell silent, every ear tuned to her words. David finally spoke, his tone calm but firm. "Engines aren't the only things that can change, Amanda. People can too, but only if they're willing." Amanda nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I am willing. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I want to be better. I want to learn." David's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then that's a start." The moment was simple, but it carried weight. Two people from completely different worlds, once divided by arrogance and pride, now stood face to face in mutual respect. From that day forward, Amanda's life took a different path. She didn't quit her role as CEO, but she led differently. She treated her employees with humility, listened more, and carried herself with less pride. She even started an initiative to support small garages and independent mechanics, inspired by David's story. Some called it damage control. Others called it a publicity stunt. But those who met Amanda personally noticed a difference. Her smile was warmer. Her tone was softer. For the first time in years, she wasn't trying to prove herself. She was trying to grow. And she gave credit where it was due. To the mechanic who taught her a lesson no business school ever could. David, meanwhile, continued to thrive. His garage expanded, his reputation soared, and yet he remained grounded. To him, the night at the showroom wasn't about fame. It was about respect. One evening, as the sun set behind his busy garage, Amanda stopped by again. This time, she didn't come with guilt or shame. She came as a friend. "Funny," she said with a small smile. "When I made that bet, I never thought I'd end up here, admiring the very man I tried to mock." David chuckled, shaking his head. "Life has its ways of humbling us. The real question is, did you learn from it?" Amanda met his eyes and smiled genuinely. "More than you'll ever know." They shook hands, equals at last. And so, the mechanic who once stood humiliated in a room full of laughter had transformed not just an engine, but a powerful woman's heart. The world remembered the story as the night a mechanic silenced a CEO. But for Amanda and David, it was more than that. It was proof that respect, once earned, can break barriers, heal arrogance, and inspire change.